Galway very many years now, with my wife Mary, who's also a Dublin. And by coincidence, Mary's granddad was a carpenter here many years ago, and Mary's dad is a Clonbore man, so I'm acknowledging Leo Finn here as well. The Quiet Man is an interesting film, and to start with, it's really important that I do this. A serious caveat. So there are a lot of faults with The Quiet Man as a movie. You could argue it's a sexist portrayal of Ireland that shouldn't be. It was made in 1951, shown in 1952. It portrays all the things that plastic paddy kind of stuff. It also has major gender issues going on in it. There's a whole load of stuff about portrayal of civic society in Ireland at the time. So if I can agree a caveat that we push all that over there, is that okay? Including all the stuff that's wrong in it. So my son Brendan was reminding me later that if you watch a lot of Disney movies now, they put up a Disney warning that it's not politically correct, or it's not. So if you can just park political correctness, this is a tongue-in-cheek approach to connecting The Quiet Man with theories of community development. But don't feel frightened by that comment. Essentially, the movie is a light-hearted romantic comedy. The other reason I'm kind of have an affiliation to the film is nothing to do with actually the content of the film. It's purely the fact that my mother and father loved the film. My dad died when I was 7 months old, and it was one of the final movies they saw before he died. Well, it was a good bit before he died. So my mother loved the movie. So there's that kind of emotional attachment to it at a very, very basic level. So is that caveat okay? Okay, I take that as yes. So a very basic question is, who here has not seen the movie The Quiet Man? All right, so that's okay. That's good.
I saw it when it first came out.
Did you? Did you really? Wow. And where did you see it? Where was that? In
Johannesburg.
Wow. Gosh, you got that far. Wow. So I'm going to summarise the story very, 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 very briefly. So if the movie was made literally around Ashford Castle. It was filmed around here and environs around here. In fact, Owen was reminding me as recently as yesterday where certain scenes were filmed. So it was filmed here. It was released in 1951 and kind of on major release, I think, in 1952. It won 2 Oscars. Directed by John Ford, who, in order to make the movie, he had to make a Western with the same cast, literally the same cast. Back to back. That was part of the deal. It was released by Republic Pictures, who didn't make very many movies as a producers of it certainly wasn't a Warner Brothers of its time. But it essentially is a story of a romantic comedy set in Ireland. So we're going to look at how we link this story. So it's the love story between Mary Kate Danaher, which is Maureen O'Hara, and Sean Thornton, John Wayne. So we're going to look at what I'm going to do with this, which is if you want to really look at a good analysis of one of the best analysis that has been written of the movie and what it was about, was written by Rod Stoneman and a colleague of mine at NUI Galway, Sean Crossan, who wrote about the kind of connections to Irish literature, theatre, which is something I want to make reference to, and about where that all came from at that time. However, what I'm doing really is to try and link it, this relates to what Kevin will be talking about later, is about its connection. I'm looking at it as a community development model, as a model for understanding community development. Again, with our tongues in our cheek, noting that it is a romantic comedy. So if we suppress the work of people who've written about social capital, famously like Putnam, or people who've written about community development and researched it, Parsons' work or later work by Brennan and Milliken, people that have really looked at what community development is about and the whole theories of community development, there are 3 things which really define community development as essence, and that's about name, place and value. That's who we are and what our name means to us, our place in civic society, as well as our geographical place, and how we are valued by others as part of a community, and how we value ourselves. And I'm suppressing buckets and buckets of research, which sociologists, fellow sociologists would shoot me for doing this, but I'm suppressing it all in for the sake of the evening into the two key factors of belonging, which Kevin is definitely going to talk about, and I think Nadine as well, and social capital. And the two forms of social capital are bridging social capital, bonding social capital, and bridging social capital. Bonding social capital is getting by, bridging is getting ahead. So when I was growing up in Dublin going to discos, my bonding social capital was, I'm from Manor Street in Dublin, but you said you were the North Circular Road in order to get into the disco. You didn't say we were actually. So there's bonding and bridging social capital. We'll come back to those. So the first main character is, the character is Sean Thornton, who's a boxer who's returns to Innisfree to reclaim this house, White of Morn, which was the name of the cottage. He's a successful boxer with a bit of a secret. He comes back to Ireland and falls in love with Mary Kate Danaher. So the big thing for Sean Thornton is about name, the famous name of the Thornton name. So if you look at the first part of the triangle, name is a key thing we look for in him in a moment. The second main character in the movie is Mary Kate Danaher, played by Maureen O'Hara. And Mary Kate Danaher, believe it or not, her big issue is around value. Her own value of herself and the value in which she's held. Now we leave aside the kind of dowry issue, although it will come up a little bit later, and all that this was set in post-Civil War Ireland. It wasn't even set in 1950. Leaving the mores of the time aside and the norms of the time aside, her big, and as you will see, her really strong power as a character in the movie is about her value and her value of herself. And we're going to come back to that. So her one is, whereas John Wayne, he's primarily about name, hers is about place. And then the value is really Squire Red Will Danaher, played by Victor McLagan. By the way, I'm going to sneak in some stories about the movie that are, some are, we think are true, some were, as Owen and I were saying, are questionably true about things that happened in the movie. One or two funny things. But Squire Red Will Danaher, played by Victor McLagan, who wasn't actually Irish, being it was Welsh, comes across as he's the baddie in the film, he's her brother, and he's not willing to allow her to marry John Wayne in the film. It's about the whole interaction of the relationship. For me, though, the key character from a community development point of view is Barry Fitzgerald. So Barry Fitzgerald is called Michael O'Flynn, and I'm describing him as a community development worker of his time. He was a bookie, an undertaker, a matchmaker, and various other functions. He had a lot of jobs. So one of the famous stories about the movie was when John Ford made it, they all stayed in this hotel here, and it was filmed. And one of the stories is that John Ford was very worried about Barry Fitzgerald returning to Ireland in 1950 and going on the beer between filming. And he had people minding him to get him in and out of Ashford Castle from filming around the locality. What he didn't think about was the fact that John Wayne might be a risk. And John Wayne's stand-in for the movie, particularly for the fight scenes, was a bar owner in a place called the Neil, near here, a guy called Mellett's of the Neil. I think Michael Mellett or John Mellett. Oh, it was Joe Mellett. So exactly, Joe Mellett. And one of the stories famously is that Joe encouraged, although in fairness to Joe, I don't think he took him on the drink, somebody encouraged John Wayne to take a quiet pint after filming one evening, and they eventually got him in a pub called Mora Luke's in Tourmakeady. They eventually found him. So John Ford got that one slightly wrong. So what we're going to do is look at some clips of the film and a little bit of story and just orientate it fairly quickly. So the first one, if I can do this right, so just to set the scene, this is the scene where it takes place in St. Mary's Church, which is a Church of Ireland church, and it's exactly the same as you see it here, where Sean Thornton totally gets community wrong. Even though he's using his name, he gets the whole community wrong in basically trying to get his mark off, for want of a better term, with Mary Kate Danaher. I think this will work, Owen, if I...
Yeah, just pass forward, yeah.
Just press forward again, sorry. And sorry, by the way, the children in this are John Wayne's own children in the shot. They were extras.
of that now, none of that. It's a bold, sinful man you are, Sean Thornton. And who taught you to be playing patty fingers in the holy water?
Being polite, so.
Maybe you don't know it's a privilege reserved for courting couples, and then only when the banns has been read. Huh. And Mary Kate Danaher dipping her fingers in as neat as you please.
What did you say her name was?
Mary Kate Danaher. And don't be getting any notions into your head.
Mary Kate.
Forget it, Sean, forget it. Put it out of your mind entirely.
Why? What's the matter? She isn't married or anything, is she?
Married that one? No, absolutely. And her with the freckles in her temper. Oh, that red head of hers is no lie. Still, a man might put up with that, but not with the like of a fortune.
So Sean Thornton does get notions in his head and pursues Mary Kate Danaher. And in the next scene we're going to look at, it's actually about her value of herself. And again, I'm putting the obvious context of a dowry and what that means and meant at the time. So she meets, he proposes to her indirectly through Micheline O'Flynn, who's a matchmaker. And in the proposal she says that she has saved so much money, she owns various things, she has wealth and so forth. And that she's interested in marrying him. So at the occasion of doing the deal, Micheline O'Flynn, as you will see, arrives in his matchmaking outfit and is striking the deal, but he hits the bottle. So she's laid out her argument very forcefully of what she's willing, her terms for becoming engaged to Sean Thornton. And this is what, it's just a funny scene. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. What was it?
Just for that scene, just say the forward button, same button again.
I've hit the wrong one. Maybe I'm, sorry. Oh, yeah, it's okay. Sorry, big time.
The glowworm's lamp is gleaming long. How sweet to roam through Mona's grove, while the drowsy world is dreaming long.
Do you know the peeler and the goat?
I do not.
Neither do I.
Could you use a little water in your whiskey?
When I drink whiskey, I drink whiskey. And when I drink water, I drink water.
So they do the deal, in theory anyway, and they pull a fast one on Redwell Danaher, and they do get married. But the Redwell Danaher is unwilling that the dowry will be paid, and this causes great upset for Mary Kate Danaher because she feels her value is not being respected. However, they don't actually consummate the marriage, and they have a bit of a row on the marriage night. And the next morning, this is a very interesting scene. This is where social capital kicks in, at least where bridging social capital kicks in, because Micheline O'Flynn arrives with her furniture with locals from the community. I want you to watch the end of this scene where he brings in the cot, because there's a very funny anecdotal story about it. So this is about I'm terming this loose community belonging because it's about the community as a kind of, this is what Lynn Jamison would talk about, the difference between caring for and caring about. Caring about is empathy, caring for is compassion. We care about many people, but caring for is action. So this is about how the community acts in favour of Mary Kate Danaher and Sean Thornton, newly married by supporting them. But I want you to particularly watch Micheline O'Flynn at the end of the scene, and I'll explain why.
Hello, the house! Anyone up? Good morning. Good morning. I suppose it is a bit early to be calling.
Well, after you left last night, Mary Kate,
A couple of us persuaded Danaher to change his mind.
It's what might be called a sort of belated wedding present.
My things. My furniture.
Oh, we'd have brought them over last night, Sean, but due to the circumstances, we thought you'd be needing your stay.
Thanks.
Impetuous. Homeric.
So what had happened there was he sees the bed and he says impetuous Homeric. What he actually said, there was a reason why he said that, because he had a row with John Ford. Barry Fitzgerald saw himself as an Abbey actor, as a serious Abbey actor. And he did, as did Jack McGowan, who's in the film as well. And they felt they were being belittled by the director, John Ford, as kind of paddy Irish actors. So that was totally ad-libbed. Homeric was about Homer, and it was his way of having a go, but it was left in the movie. The bit that was cut out by the censor was, he said, so by the way, the bed was broken, so it implied that sexual activity had occurred that was a bit above and beyond. And what he actually said, but it was cut out, was, Homeric, impetuous, the power of the man. And the Irish censor cut that out. So, I'm moving on to kind of speeding up. The film culminates in a famous fight scene, which is filmed all around here. And it's where Sean Thornton decides to absolutely call it and battle it out with her brother, Red Will Danaher. This is actually my favourite scene in the whole movie. So in the middle of the fight, they take a break from fighting to have a drink before they continue fighting. And they come into what is Cohen's pub here, although it actually wasn't filmed inside it, but it's Pat Cohen's in the village. And a key point in this is that it actually is the kind of culmination of acceptance for Sean Thornton in the whole movie with the baddie and you know, it's the whole thing of actually kind of individualized acceptance for him in the whole nature of what is still a comedy. So if we look at this is where they're in the fight scene, and it kind of culminates the end of the fight scene.
Just press the same forward button, Pat.
Yeah, got it. Oh yeah, sorry.
Now, like you say, whiskey? No, that'd be too warm and it'd get your blood up. Porter's the very thing.
It's peaceful and quiet in here, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, this has been a fight I'd come a long way to see.
I hope you can stick around for the finish.
Don't worry about that. You know, Yank, I've taken quite a liking to you.
I'm getting real fond of you, too.
Your widow, my sister, she could have done a lot worse. True, poor woman.
Thanks. Fill him up again.
You buy me no drinks.
The drinks are on the house of Cahan, sir.
And I'm taking no drinks from you, you little squint.
I'm buying the drinks.
You can buy me a drink at your wake. Not before.
I'm buying. Bartel. What time is it?
5:30, sir.
So he wins the fight, and they make up and become friends. So the two culminating parts at the very end of the film, the first is about the whole sense of belonging and community coming together at an individual level for them as now brothers-in-law and relations. And it's very interesting, the next scene I show you, the way Mary Kate Danaher still asserts her authority in very good and subtle ways in the movie. And then the last one, there's two last ones at the end I explain. So the first one is looking at individual kind of name, place and value, belonging, and individual social capital coming together for them. So needless to say, at this stage, they're well oiled, the two of them. So we look at that.
Oh, no, boy, Jack Duggan was his name. He was born and bred in Ireland, in a place called Castlemaine. He was his father's only son, his mother's pride and joy, and dearly did his parents love this wild colonial boy. Woman of the house, I have brought the brother home to supper.
He is kindly welcome.
God bless all in this house.
Wipe your feet.
Thank you.
Sit down, that's what chairs are for.